Hi.
Hi there, welcome back to English for Specific Purposes at the B2 level. We are your host. I'm Mr. Darryl.
And I'm Miss Tatia. მოგესალმებით. კეთილი იყოს თქვენი დაბრუნება ჩვენს ტელესკოლაში. მე თათია ვარ, ეს კი დერილია. დღევანდელი გაკვეთილის თემა კი არქიტექტურა. So we're going to talk about architecture today, Mr. Darryl. But before we move on to the lesson, I think that we have to look at our agenda. What's on our agenda today, Mr. Darryl?
Well, we should start with an introduction. We'll talk about architecture a little bit. We'll move from there to a vocabulary list, which will be useful for the reading text that comes after. And from there, we will move on to the grammar section and then finish things up with some homework.
Very interesting. გაკვეთილს როგორც ყოველთვის შესწავლით დავიწყებთ, სადაც შევისწავლით არქიტექტურასთან დაკავშირებულ ახალ სიტყვებს, ამის შემდეგ წავიკითხავთ ტექსტს, ამას მოყვება გრამატიკა, შემდეგ შევაჯამებთ გაკვეთილს და საბოლოოდ დავასრულებთ საშინაო დავალებით. Let's get started, Mr. Darryl. Before we start just learning the words, I want to ask you, what's your dream house like?
My dream house, well, it would be, I think, a great apartment, perhaps, somewhere in New York or London.
Really? Would you like to live in an apartment?
Yeah, I mean, like a good high-rise skyscrapers apartment, sure.
Really? So our tastes differ, it turns out, because I wouldn't like to live in a high-rise building.
Oh, no?
No, I would like to have a small house with a garden and with a lot, kind of an orchard with a lot of trees in it and a small swimming pool, not a big one, but a small one. And just all the comfortable things inside the house.
You might be interested to know that when I was a kid in Toronto, we lived in a house with a swimming pool.
Really?
And but no orchard.
Okay, so nice, so nice. I would like to see that house.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's get started. Let's look at our words. And the first word we have is semi-detached house. So a semi-detached house is a noun, and in Georgian is translated as სახლი, რომელსაც მომიჯნავე სახლთან საერთო კედელი აქვს. Okay, semi-detached house. And how would you define that word, Mr. Darryl?
Semi-detached house is a house that is attached on one side to another house, so not on the other side.
Okay, so semi-detached house. სახლი, რომელსაც მომიჯნავე სახლთან საერთო კედელი აქვს. I think that for Georgia it's not quite characteristic. Have you ever seen it?
I can't even think right now of seeing one.
No, I also haven't seen a house like that.
But it is quite popular in London and those kinds of places.
Yes. So semi-detached house. სახლი, რომელსაც მომიჯნავე სახლთან საერთო კედელი აქვს. And here's an example. They live in a semi-detached house. And what is the next word we have?
It's a high-rise building. What I had just said.
Yes, you have used this word. You want to live in a high-rise building.
Yeah.
So what a high-rise building is? A high-rise building is a noun, and in Georgian it's translated as მრავალსართულიანი შენობა. So how would you define that word, Mr.?
It's fairly simple. It's just a building with many floors and with apartments on each floor.
Okay, high-rise building. მაღალსართულიანი შენობა. And an example here, she lives in a high-rise building overlooking the river.
The view must be great there.
Yeah, it must be. And the next word we have is slum. Slum is a noun, and in Georgian it's translated as ჯურღმული ქალაქის ღარიბული და კეთილმოუწყობელი რაიონი. Slum. So how would you define that word, Mr.?
Many big cities have some kind of slum, I think. A very poor and crowded area, especially in the big cities.
Okay, slum. It's a noun, and in Georgian it is ჯურღმული ქალაქის ღარიბული და კეთილმოუწყობელი რაიონი. And an example here, we shall try our best to remedy the conditions in the slums. So the conditions in the slums are not good, so I think that the government should try to remedy the situation, right? The conditions.
By introducing some sort of reform or some sort of investment.
Improve the situation there, conditions, living conditions. And what is the next word, Mr. Darryl?
It's a hovel. Hovel.
Hovel. Hovel is a noun, and in Georgian it is kochi. Is it a small house, not very comfortable?
It's a small house in dirty or disrepair, in bad condition.
Okay. Hovel, a noun, and in Georgian it is kochi. And an example here, from the same materials, one man builds palaces, another a hovel.
It's a
strange
saying.
thing.
It's a good saying. From the same materials, one man can create something amazing, and another man might create something terrible.
Terrible, yes, that's a very good thing. And the next word we have is?
Mansion, mansion.
Mansion is a noun, and in Georgian it is translated as Didi sakutari sahli. Mansion. I think it's everybody's dream, I think. Right? To have a mansion.
Your dream, I think.
Okay.
A mansion, it's a very large, expensive house.
Okay. Mansion. It's a noun. And in Georgian it is translated as Didi sakutari sahli. And here is an example. The street is lined with enormous mansions where the rich and famous live. So rich and famous people usually live in mansions. Am I right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Politicians as well.
Politicians as well, yes. Okay, now let's move on. And I think that we have finished with the first side of vocabulary, and it's time to practice. We will see definitions, and we have to match the right word.
Would you like to go first, Ms. Tatya?
Of course, I'm ready.
Here you go. Here's your first sentence. A small home that is dirty and in bad condition.
I remember you told me this is a hovel. Am I right?
Yes, you are correct.
So, a hovel is a small home that is dirty and in bad conditions. Now let's move on. Here's a definition for you. A very large, expensive house is called?
Where celebrities might live, a mansion.
A mansion, you are right. So, a very large, expensive house is called a mansion. Now let's move on. I'm ready.
You're ready for a house that is joined to another similar house only on one side.
I remember you told me that this kind of houses are not common in Georgia and in Tbilisi, so this is called a semi-detached house. Am I right?
You are perfectly correct.
Okay, so a semi-detached house is a house that is joined to another similar house on only one side. Okay, now let's move on. And a definition for you. A very poor and crowded area, especially of a city. What is it called?
Well, we spoke about that. It is a slum.
And you are right, Mr. Daryl. So a very poor, crowded area, especially of a city, is called a slum.
Mm-hmm. And last, for you, a tall, modern building with many, many floors.
It was very easy to guess. It's a high-rise building. So a tall, modern building with many floors is called a high-rise building.
By the way, Ms. Tatya, I once lived in a building on the 32nd floor.
32nd?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, just because I wanted to.
Is it your happy number?
No, just I was looking for places to rent, and that was the apartment that came up.
You live there
Yeah,
now.
I lived, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
In Toronto.
And just, what about the view?
The view was fantastic. You could see pretty much half of Toronto.
Oh, so interesting. It's just so interesting to look out of the window.
One interesting thing was it was so high that you couldn't open the windows. So they built the windows to be permanently shut.
It's so uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, safety standards probably.
Yes. Okay. I would never live in that kind of flat. Definitely. So we have finished with the words, and it's time to move to reading. So before we move to the reading, let's have a discussion. Mr. Jerry, which city has the best architecture in your opinion? I mean, among the cities you've visited, and I know that you have visited quite a lot of cities.
Yeah, well, last year I was in New York, and that was probably the best I've ever seen. Times Square, Central Park, and Manhattan, and those areas.
So it means that you like modern architecture.
Yeah, no, but I also like the historic architecture in Tbilisi as well.
Okay, well, I think that a lot of people say that this old part of Tbilisi is very attractive.
Narikala and so
yeah.
on. Yeah, old Tbilisi.
Yes, okay. And just, I think that Rome, the architecture of Rome is also well known all over the world. Okay, it demonstrates the history and the heritage of the whole country, and I think that it's really, really amazing, right?
Yeah, but well put.
Okay. Well, let's move on and let's learn some words in order to read the text and understand the text better. So the first word we have here is prosperous. Prosperous is an adjective, and in Georgian is translated as დიდარი, წარმატებული, აყვავებული. Okay, country can be prosperous, yes?
Countries can be prosperous. People can be prosperous as well.
People also can.
To be rich and successful.
Okay, so prosperous, it's an adjective, and it's translated as დიდარი, წარმატებული, აყვავებული, and here's an example. The area is becoming more and more prosperous. And what is the next word we have, Mr. Dario?
It is renowned, renowned.
Renowned is an adjective, and in Georgian is translated as სახელგანთქმული, ცნობილი, renowned. And
The definition,
the same as famous?
Yes, good guess. It's when something is known for something and is famous for being known for something.
Okay, thank you. So renowned is an adjective, and in Georgian is translated as სახელგანთქმული, ცნობილი. And the example demonstrates the use of this word. The region is renowned for its outstanding natural beauty. Is it about Georgia?
I would say yes.
I think yes. Okay, well, the next word we have is
Marvel, marvel.
So marvel is a noun, and in Georgian is translated as საოცრება. So marvel, is it something surprising, Mr. Daryl?
Yes, indeed. It can be a thing or a person, and when it's surprising because it causes a lot of admiration.
Yes, so something very beautiful can be considered as marvel, right? So marvel is a noun, and in Georgian it is translated as საოცრება. And here's an example. The panoramic view was a real marvel. So it means that it was very, very beautiful, right?
I think the view from Narikala, in fact, it would be a marvel. In my estimation.
Yes, I agree with you. And what is the next word we have, Mr. Daryl?
Work of art. It's a noun, collocation, I guess. Work of art.
Work of art is a noun, and in Georgian we translate it as ხელოვნების ნიმუში. Work of art. I think that we have a lot of works of art in Georgia.
You do. And a synonym for it is masterpiece as well.
Yeah.
A work of art is an object made by an artist with great skill or great
Talent, maybe.
Talent as well. And it could be a drawing, could be a painting, could be a lot of things.
And a building also, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Work of art is a noun, and in Georgian is translated as ხელოვნების ნიმუში. And an example here, the new building in the city center was a real work of art. So it was like a piece of art, right? It was so beautiful, right?
Architecture that can be works of art are lovely to look at.
Yeah, okay. And what is the next word we have, Mr. Daryl?
Ingenuity, ingenuity.
Ingenuity is a noun, and in Georgian it's translated as შემოქმედებითობა. How would you define this word, Mr. Daryl?
Well, I'd say it's the ability to think of clever new ways to accomplish something, to finish something.
So ingenuity is a noun, and it's translated as შემოქმედებითობა. And here's an example. I was impressed by the ingenuity of the architects. So yeah, really architects need to have this skill.
The modern world is all about innovation anyway, so you have to be
and creativity.
Yeah, you've got to have that ingenuity.
Especially for architects, I think that's really, really important. What is the next word, Mr. Daryl?
It's a verb, and it is to embody, to embody.
To embody is a verb, and in Georgian it's translated as განხორციელება, რეალიზება, ხორცის შესხმა. Embody, so how would you define that word, Mr. Daryl?
It's to represent a quality or an idea exactly.
Okay. Embody, it's a verb, and in Georgian it's translated as განხორციელება, რეალიზება, ხორცის შესხმა. And we can use the word in a sentence like this. His paintings embody the very essence of the immediate post-war years. And I think that we have finished with the words, and it's time to read a text, which will be about some marvels.
Good word, good word.
Okay, now let's get started. The world's tallest building, a living wonder, a stunning work of art, an incomparable feat of engineering. Burj Khalifa is all that. In concept and execution, Burj Khalifa has no peer. More than just the world's tallest building, Burj Khalifa is an unprecedented example of international cooperation, a symbolic beacon of progress, and an emblem of the new, dynamic, and prosperous Middle East. It's also tangible proof of Dubai's growing role in changing world. In fewer than 30 years, the city has transformed itself from a regional center to a global one. This success was not based on oil reserves, but on reserves of human talent, ingenuity, and initiative. Burj Khalifa embodies that vision. Mr. Alabar, chairman of Emaar Properties, said, Burj Khalifa goes beyond its imposing physical speculations. In Burj Khalifa, we see the triumph of Dubai's vision of breaking seemingly impossible and entirely new benchmarks.
You know, it's amazing that Dubai went from being pretty much a desert city half a century ago to being what it is now.
Yeah.
Okay, and well, talking about Toronto, defining the Toronto skyline at 554 meters, CN Tower is the world's largest tower, a record it has held for over 3 decades. As Toronto, Ontario, and Canada's most recognizable icon, the CN Tower is an internationally renowned architectural triumph, an engineering wonder of the modern world, a world-class entertainment and dining destination, and a must-see for anyone visiting Toronto. Each year, over 1.5 million people visit Canada's National Tower to take in the breathtaking views and enjoy all the CN Tower has to offer. Over the years, millions of dollars have been invested in expanding and revitalizing the CN Tower to continue to provide visitors with world-class experiences.
And by the way, have you visited this place? It's in Toronto.
Of course.
In your hometown.
Of course, you can't not see it wherever you live. Almost wherever you live, you can just
really?
see it in the distance.
Okay. So in 1995, the CN Tower was classified as one of the 7 wonders of the modern world by the American Society of Civil Engineers. Canada's Wonder of the World shares this destination with the Empire State Building, the Channel under the English Channel, the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, Itaipu Dam on the Brazil-Paraguay border, the Panama Canal, and the North Sea protection works off the European coast. Since the CN Tower opened, Canadians and tourists from around the world have made the trip to Toronto to celebrate this marvel of engineering. Besides serving as a telecommunications hub, the CN Tower provides a wide range of unique attractions, exhibits, and food and beverage venues.
Mm-hmm. One of the most amazing things is the restaurant. The coolest things is the restaurant at the top that circles around as you eat.
Oh, really?
And you have a view of the entire city as you eat.
It's a real marvel of architecture.
Architectural marvel.
Okay, now I think that we have to read the questions and we have to decide, which building is it about, right?
Okay.
So we read about 2 buildings, Burj Khalifa and the second one, which was in Toronto, CN Towers, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's a quiz.
It's a kind of a quiz. Okay. So the first question is, which building is in a city that has become an international center? Do you remember, Mr. Daryl?
An international center, I would have to say then Burj Khalifa.
And you're right, Mr. Daryl, because we read. It's also tangible proof of Dubai's growing role in changing world. In fewer than 30 years, the city has transformed itself from a regional center to a global one. Okay, and the next one for me.
Yes, which building mentions the possibility of eating there?
I think it was about CN Tower, because CN Tower is an internationally renowned architectural triumph, an engineering wonder of the modern world, a world-class entertainment and dining destination, and a must-see for everyone visiting Toronto. And I remember you told me that it's a kind of rotating restaurant,
yes.
which is really worth
moves
seeing.
Very slowly, so you don't get sick or anything, but yeah, you rotate as you eat.
It's very interesting. Okay, the next question for you, Mr. Terrell. Listen carefully. Which building claims to be an example of countries working together?
based on what we read in the text, I'd have to say Burj Khalifa.
And you're right, Mr. Daryl, because we read, more than just the world's tallest building, Burj Khalifa is an unprecedented example of international cooperation. I mean, the countries working together, right? A symbolic beacon of progress and an emblem of the new dynamic and prosperous Middle East. And the last question, I think, for you.
For you.
For me, yes.
Indeed. Which building claims to be a top tourism destination?
I think it was about CN Tower, because we read, since the CN Tower opened, Canadians and tourists from around the world have made the trip to Toronto to celebrate this marvel of engineering. Marvel of engineering, it's a very good phrase. I will use it in, just in my speaking.
Make sure to visit Toronto one day.
Of course, it's on my bucket list.
Your bucket list?
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay. I think that we have finished with the reading part and it's time to move to grammar, and today we're going to talk about cleft sentences again, but different type of cleft sentences. At the previous lesson we talked about cleft sentences which start with eat, but today we are going to talk about cleft sentences which start with what, and let's see how they work.
In cleft sentences with what, the word order is changed to give an emphasis to what comes first in the sentence. A what clause is often used to emphasize emotions such as like, need, feel, think, want, dislike, and prefer.
Okay, very interesting. For example, I can say, what I want to do now is to travel to Toronto. Okay, well.
Well said.
Now let's move on. Now how we can form the sentences. We form the sentences the following way. We start with what, then noun or pronoun, then emotive verb, then plus verb to be, plus noun or noun clause. It seems a little bit complicated, but I will show you the examples and it will be easier for you to understand. We need to distinguish between modern and traditional buildings. Now I want to make it into cleft sentence and emphasize what we need to do is to distinguish between modern and traditional buildings. A what clause with the auxiliary do is to emphasize the event or action. For example, he left the door unlocked, and the cleft sentence will be what he did was leave the door unlocked. What plus subject plus do plus verb to be plus verb clause. I analyzed all of the experiment data, and cleft sentence would sound like this. What I do is analyze all of the experiment data.
Thank you, that's very informative.
Yeah. Now let's try and make sentences, turn them into cleft sentences, okay? Highlighting the important information for us. And the first sentence we have is, they decided to redecorate the house. So how would you say it in a different way?
Here's what I would say. What they decided to do was to redecorate the house.
And you're right, Mr. Daryl. And now my turn.
Yeah, here's your sentence, Ms. Tatia. They want to discuss the solutions to the problems of noise pollution.
Okay, I would say it's this way. What they wanted to discuss was the problem of noise pollution.
You've emphasized what the situation was.
And now it's here for you. I need to interview the people who worked on the construction site.
I would say this. So what I need to do is to interview the people who worked on the construction site.
And you're right, Mr. Daryl. And it's my turn, I think.
She always asks for the quietest room in the hotel.
And I would say it's this way. What she asks for is the quietest room in the hotel.
Do you ask for the quietest room in the hotel?
Yeah, by the way. It's about me, maybe. Okay, and I think that we have finished with grammar part 2, and it's time to wrap up the lesson.
As you remember, Ms. Tatia, we spoke about vocabulary in the beginning. That led us to the reading text, which was about renowned buildings, 2 of them. And from there we moved to the grammar, which we looked at cleft sentences specifying using what.
Very interesting. And I think that it's time to give homework, and I'm really interested to know what the homework is for today.
Something which hopefully you'll give us your opinion on. We'd like you to write a paragraph describing what great architecture means to you.
Very interesting. So people can write a lot of interesting ideas here, right? And where can the homework be uploaded, Mr. Gerald?
It can be uploaded to the address on the screen right now, and you can find a sample answer there as well.
Well, okay, very useful as usual. Now it's time to say goodbye to the audience and look forward to seeing them again.
Although we're not done with this topic yet.
Yes, we are going to move on and learn some interesting things about architecture again. But for now we have to say goodbye, right? Okay, so stay with us and keep on learning.
Until next time, goodbye.
Bye.